I'm Alice, CEO and founder of Sonyu Consultancy Services, which is an early-stage startup committed to crafting sustainable development solutions, specifically aligned with the United Nations 2030 agenda. Goal number one, end poverty in all its forms everywhere, as well as goal number 10, reduce inequality within and among countries. Once upon a time, a great kingdom found itself in a time of pain and sorrow. There has never been a better example of the phrase from grass to grace than this African nation, formerly known as Abyssinia, located in the horn of the continent. The people fell into a season of mixed fortunes when the nation was under the leadership of a terrible dictator. Ethiopia had to fight for its life to escape 10 years' violence. Just 18 years ago, the country had one of the highest poverty rates in the world, but Ethiopia has accomplished a feat by turning its economy into the largest in the area. This is an example of Africa. In today's episode, I'm going to bring you a real-world case study from struggle to success. We are going to look at Ethiopia, the second most populous nation in Africa, witness how Ethiopia's strategic growth pattern, utilizing the Chinese government direct investment and the United States financial bits of help, and of course international aid, could illuminate the path for others.
This is Joshua. He's hungry. Today, he's not eaten any food. Literally nothing. Now, Joshua is not in some barren desert like the Sahara where there is no food. Literally, a 5-minute walk up this hill, there's a small supermarket where you can buy as much food as you really want or would need. Joshua's issue is that he's an orphan. His guardian neighbour is trying to raise her own 3 children by herself and then also look after Joshua and his little sister. But she has no job. How do you put food in the belly of your own children, let alone your dead neighbour's children? She tries, but what's her chances? She's got no education, she's got no unemployment benefits, she's got no social security. It's not that she's fallen through the cracks of the system, there is no system. She literally has no way to put food into Joshua's belly. This is Joshua. He watched today as some lucky children went to school. He so wishes he could go to school, but it costs 50 cents to go to school here. And he hasn't got 50 cents. 50 cents. He's not alone. Most people in this slum, they live on $1 or $2 a day. How do you take the dollars that you earn and pay rent, buy some food, and still have 50 cents left over to pay for school fees? You just can't. He won't go to school ever. No education, no learning. He'll remain illiterate, not able to read or write. And Joshua will stay here and die in this slum. And along with maybe the other 60 million children in the next decade who live in the slums on our planet. But who we listen to determines what we hear. Where we stand determines what we see. What we do determines who we are. So who are you? See, Joshua's only problem is that he was born in the wrong place. He didn't choose to be born here. So should he be condemned to a living hell now because of a choice he never made? And now something else is about to happen to Joshua and his family. It's about to get dark in this slum. And there's no lights. There's no police present. I mean, during the day, we see the chaos, we see the trash, we see the smell of sewage, we see people walking around, we see them barely surviving by their living. But at dark, we don't see what happens. 1 out of every 3 women have been beaten or abused. Nearly 1 out of 2 10-year-old to 19-year-old girls, 45% of them, have been raped in this slum. Turn the sun off, and this slum and little Joshua live in fear of violence. And in the dark of night, no one knows what happens. No one's here filming it. It's hidden, but it's real. But this is Joshua. He's still here. He can't escape. And what did he do wrong? Nothing. Nothing. You know, for 17 cents, food can be put in his belly. $35 a month will give him an education to empower him out of the cycle of poverty. And the good news is, you can join this movement. You can be a part of helping this Joshua and many other Joshuas. Join the movement to kick extreme poverty off the face of the planet.
That's our life reality. Where we stand determines what we see, and what we do determines who we are. It's an unfortunate, super dark fact of our life, which we live every single day. But you know, the good news is you can join us and shape a better world together. We do believe change is possible when we stand together. Infinite Insight podcast is a dynamic exploration of root causes and finding ingenious solutions for tackling poverty and inequality. But before we dive into the story, let's begin with a brief background. With more than 123 million, Ethiopia is the second most populous country in Africa after Nigeria. In a way, Ethiopia experience illustrates both the good and bad in African development story. I mean, in many parts of Africa, development in Ethiopia was held back by persistent and violent political instabilities. In less than 20 years, from 1974 to 1991, Ethiopia went through bloody chains of government from monarchy to communist regime, you know, and then to the current semi-free market economic order. And those years also saw several interstate war and almost uninterrupted civil war. At the turn of millennium, after a deadly war with Eritrea, Ethiopia attained a period of a relative peace, which created an opportunity for sustained policy effort to advance to inclusive growth. And actually, this growth experience helped to lift tens of millions of citizens out of extreme poverty within a few years. However, growth was again interrupted by political instability in 2018. Moreover, in late 2020, another civil war broke in Tigray, the northern part of Ethiopia. And you know, this shock has disrupted Ethiopia's recent progress to escape poverty. Some economists believe Ethiopia's rapid economic growth between 2001 and 2018 has significantly reduced poverty. As you can see here, this graph shows GDP per capita and all GDP growth rate in the past decade. A very high growth rate of more than 10% on average raised income per capita from less than $200 at the turn of century to more than $800 by 2018. But you know, while GDP growth was very high by international standards, Ethiopia started from a very low base, so the average income still was very low. They have another graph that shows the benefit of growth was also broadly shared. I mean, the percentage of people living under the poverty line fell from 39 to 24% between 2004 and 2018. The rapid economic growth also improved the socioeconomic well-being of the very poor people. It can thus be characterized as inclusive of broad-based growth. For instance, between 2005 and 2018, the infant mortality rate was reduced half from about 12 per 100 to just below 6 per 100. There were also notable improvement in life expectancy, which increased by more than 10 years due to the expansion of primary health services. Moreover, primary school enrollment has approached 100%, and secondary school enrollment, while still far from the universal, but has improved substantially. Also, in terms of infrastructure, economic growth has brought about increased access to electricity, clean water and sanitation, healthcare services, and roads and railways. Most of this development were also aligned and coordinated with the global initiative to reduce poverty. And of course, compared to other countries, access to basic services is still very low in Ethiopia. However, the pace of improvement has been quite rapid. Ethiopia also operates Africa's largest social safety net program to protect people in extreme poverty. Ethiopia's productive safety net program was launched in 2005 in collaboration with the World Bank and the United Nations, and it was mainly funded by foreign development assistance. This program provides economic assistance in the form of food aid and food rewards, and for extremely poor and vulnerable people. And since its launch, the program had assisted 5 to 8 million people every year to build their economic resilience and improve food security. The government has also invested heavily in the social sector. That means educational expenditure on average was greater than 4% of GDP, which was slightly greater than the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. And it's provided sufficient resources for constructing new schools, constructing new universities. And between 2004 and 2018, the number of public universities increased from just one university to more than 37, which enrolled more than half a million students. Also, health expenditure was relatively increased. At the first, it was humble but sufficient to extend access to primary healthcare services, and the extension of higher education helped train tens of thousands of healthcare workers across the country. But the question is, how could a country lift millions of citizens out of extreme poverty? And how can we explain Ethiopia's successful economic growth story? Let's dive a little more and consider to how Ethiopia's development was financed. First, international development assistance from bilateral and multilateral sources such as the United States, the European Union, and the World Bank were consistently increasing, topping more than $4 billion by 2017. A second, Ethiopia's debt burden was also rising consistently. I mean, a great deal of this borrowing came from China, which financed many infrastructure projects such as roads, such as airports, such as railways line. And finally, the third funding source came from domestic financing was made possible through low official interest rate, which enabled the government to obtain a cheap credit from a state-owned bank to finance larger development projects. The deepest growth path can be seen as an example of developmental state model. where highly centralized state execute a long-term policy with relatively effectiveness. This developmental state model had two main defining features. The first was policy continuously, which was achieved through a highly centralized political system with a dominant of ruling party and a semi-reactionary political system. The second feature was the presence of an activated state. What I mean by that is the state played a leading role by engaging in a productive economic sector such as manufacturing as a temporary exchange for a missing competitive of private sectors. In other words, the state effectively utilized domestic resources and also external financing from developmental partners, from the farm lenders, to implement a long-term agenda of inclusive development, which was guided by an ambitious long-term vision to achieve the middle income status by 2025. It was outline of succession of 5 years poverty reduction and growth and transformation plans. There was also a strong emphasis on heavy investment that support inclusive development. Many core projects such as road construction also emphasize agricultural development and inclusion. And I do believe these policies sought to achieve a structural transformation by attracting foreign investment. So dozens of industries were built, and the government and party affiliated firms invested heavily in key industries. And the creation of Ethiopia's industrial park is among the most amazing improvement. This initiative was aligned with Ethiopia's ambition to establish itself as an essential hub for African light manufacturing. There is an excellent example of this initiative, which is the recently opened Hawasua Industrial Park, was built by China. The Hawasua Industrial Park expected to bring in $1 billion in income annually and offers job to 100,000. Its price is planning maximize efficiency. It has a centralized government service center, a full utility infrastructure, and practical amenities. Such amenities included on-site banking and visa facilities. Ethiopia's idea was being adopted nationwide with more than 30 comparable parks in different states of development, especially along the railway line to Djibouti. So, in result, foreign investors are taking notice of this development, and well-known companies like Zora, Tommy Hilfiger, H&M, and Calvin Klein are now outsourcing their production to Ethiopia. Additionally, businesses from Germany, from Turkey, the Netherlands, and China already investing in industrial like apparel, textile, ceramic, footwear, and pharmaceuticals. Some experts believe although growth was very effective in reducing extreme poverty, but it was slow in achieving a structural transformation. They argues that export trade remains low relative to import trade, and most of the workforce is still engaging in a non-productive agricultural sector. At the same point, economic growth under the developmental state model came at the cost of democracy, which eventually led to violent protests between 2015 and 2018. One of the immediate reasons behind this protest was the unfair displacement of farmers from their own land for development projects. In my point of view, for other developing countries, Ethiopia's growth experience highlight the importance of a development policy that guided by a long-term vision. It also indicate the government can play an important role by crafting appropriate policy and coordinating their implementation over a sustained period. Well, it's time to wrap up today's episode. As we learned, despite significant progress, Ethiopia still has a long way to achieve the sustainable development goals. To achieve further progress, Ethiopia will need to steer away from political instabilities that held back growth from the most of its story. Also, Ethiopia's growth experience point to the need to balance of trade between development and democracy. So peace and stability will have to restore if Ethiopia is to continue in advance towards sustainable development. As you know, we are just getting started, and we want you to be part of our movement. I really appreciate it if you enjoy this episode. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Join our community, share the knowledge, and let's shape a better world together. Believe it or not, change is possible when we stand together. So, until next time, keep those awesome vibes flowing, stay inspired, and keep the infinity inside alive. See you on the next episode. Bye.